They gave us 6 episodes. 6. And somehow, by the time the last frame of episode 6 hit the screen, I was sitting there, completely still, thinking, this is not over. This is nowhere near over. The Night Manager Season 2 has finally dropped all its episodes on Prime Video, now available in Hindi as well, and the internet has been going absolutely crazy over it. But here is the real question that every single person who watched Season 1 is asking, is Season 2 actually better? Or did it fall into that trap that so many second seasons fall into, where the magic just disappears? I watched all 6 episodes. Every single one. And I have a very honest answer for you, but it is not as simple as yes or no. Because Season 2 is a completely different beast. Darker, bigger, more realistic, and at certain moments, genuinely shocking. So before you decide whether to watch it or skip it, stay with me, because what I am about to tell you will completely change how you look at this season. Let's start from the very beginning, because if you have not watched Season 1, stop right here. I am serious. Do not touch Season 2 until you have finished Season 1 completely. This is not one of those shows where you can jump in from the middle or catch up with a quick summary on YouTube. The story, the characters, the emotions, everything in Season 2 is built directly on top of what happened in Season 1. The connections are deep. The callbacks are real. And if you walk into Season 2 without that foundation, you will be completely lost within the first 20 minutes. The show does not stop to explain itself. It does not hold your hand. It assumes you already know the world, and it moves forward without waiting for anyone. Now, for those who have seen Season 1, you already know the kind of show this is. It is not loud. It is not flashy, it does not rely on big action sequences every episode to keep you entertained. The Night Manager is a spy thriller that works through tension, atmosphere, and intelligence. It makes you feel like you are watching something real, something that could actually happen somewhere in the world right now. And Season 2 takes that exact foundation and pushes it even further. The scale is bigger. The world is wider. And the stakes, by the time you reach the final episode, are almost unbearably high. Season 2 takes our hero out of the environments we saw in Season 1 and drops him into an entirely new battlefield, Colombia. And Colombia is not just a new location for the sake of visual variety. It means something for the story. The setting brings a completely different energy to the season, dangerous, unpredictable, layered with political complexity and criminal networks that feel genuinely threatening. The world building in this season is one of its strongest qualities. You are not just watching a man on a mission, you are watching an entire ecosystem of power, money, weapons, and survival. Every location feels lived in. Every environment feels real. The production quality is exceptional, and it shows in every single frame of this season. The central mission of Season 2 is straightforward on the surface. Our hero is trying to stop a major weapons dealer whose operations, if left unchecked, could result in the deaths of thousands of people. But as always with this show, nothing stays simple for long. The further our hero goes into this world, the more complicated everything becomes. Loyalties shift. Identities blur. And the line between the mission and personal survival starts to disappear. This is the kind of storytelling that The Night Manager has always done well, and Season 2 continues that tradition with confidence. But here is something worth pointing out early, and this is important. Season 2 is noticeably more mature and darker than Season 1. If Season 1 had moments that felt stylish and cinematic in a more classical spy thriller way, Season 2 leans much harder into realism. It is grittier. It is heavier. There are moments in this season that sit with you after the episode ends, not because of explosions or action, but because of what they reveal about the characters and the world they are operating in. This is a show that respects its audience's intelligence. And Season 2 makes that even clearer than Season 1 did. So the first thing you need to understand going into this review is, Season 2 is not trying to copy Season 1. It is not trying to recreate that same experience. It is trying to go somewhere deeper, somewhere darker, somewhere more complicated. Whether it fully succeeds in that ambition, that is exactly what we are going to break down. But before we get to the verdict, there is something that happens in episode 3, something completely unexpected that nobody saw coming. And it changes everything you thought you understood about where this season was going. Now let's talk about the actual episodes, because this is where things get really interesting, and also where season 2 starts to show both its strengths and its weaknesses at the same time. The season opens strong. The first 2 episodes do exactly what they are supposed to do. They re-establish the world, reintroduce our hero, set up the mission, and begin building the atmosphere that this show is known for. The pacing in these early episodes is deliberate and controlled. Nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels wasted. Every scene is adding something, a layer of tension, a piece of information, a hint at something larger that is coming. And if you are a fan of season 1, these opening episodes will feel very familiar in the best possible way, but then episode 3 arrives. And everything changes, without going into heavy spoilers right now, because the full breakdown is coming later. Episode 3 delivers a moment that genuinely stops you in your tracks. It is the kind of moment where you pause the screen, sit back, and just stare at the wall for a few seconds. It is not a loud moment. It is not a dramatic explosion or a big action sequence. It is quiet. It is calculated. And that is exactly what makes it so devastating. This show has always understood that the most powerful shocks are not the ones that scream at you, they are the ones that whisper. And episode 3 whispers something that completely reframes everything you have been watching up until that point. The ground shifts beneath your feet and the rest of the season suddenly looks completely different. Episodes 4 and 5 then do something very specific, and this is where some viewers might start to feel a certain kind of frustration. After the shock of episode 3, you are expecting the season to accelerate. You are expecting things to escalate quickly, for the tension to keep building, for more twists to arrive. And while the tension does remain present throughout these episodes, the pacing pulls back. Things slow down. These 2 episodes are doing important work. They are building the architecture for what is coming in episode 6, but in the moment, especially after the intensity of episode 3, they can feel like the season is catching its breath a little too much. There are stretches in episodes 4 and 5 where the story moves carefully, almost cautiously, and if you are watching week to week that patience is tested. This is one of the honest criticisms of season 2, the pacing is uneven. It is not consistently tight the way a 6-episode season probably needs to be. When you only have 6 episodes to tell your story, every single one of them needs to be pulling full weight. And while episodes 4 and 5 are not bad by any means, they are well made, well acted, and contain genuinely important story developments, they do not hit with the same force as the episodes around them. They feel, at times, like connective tissue rather than fully realized chapters of their own. The cinematography throughout all of this, however, remains absolutely stunning. This is a beautiful show to watch. The way Colombia is captured on screen, the landscapes, the urban environments, the interiors of the world our hero is navigating, all of it looks exceptional. The production design is meticulous. Every location feels authentic. Every visual choice feels intentional. If you are watching this on a good screen, in good quality, the viewing experience is genuinely cinematic. This is not a show that cuts corners on how it looks, and that visual quality remains one of its most consistent strengths across both seasons. The performances throughout season 2 are also worth highlighting. The acting is grounded and restrained in exactly the right way. Nobody is overplaying anything. Nobody is chewing the scenery. The entire cast understands the tone of this show and commits to it completely. Our hero carries the season with the same quiet intensity that made season 1 compelling. There is something about watching a man operate under extreme pressure while maintaining absolute composure that never gets old. And the supporting cast around him adds genuine texture to the world. These feel like real people operating in a real and dangerous situation, not characters performing for the camera. But here is what nobody is talking about enough. and this might be the most fascinating thing about Season 2. The villain. Because the villain in this season is intelligent, calculated, believable. And yet, something feels slightly different compared to Season 1's antagonist. Something that only becomes fully clear when you reach the final episode. And that difference, that subtle but important shift in the power dynamic between hero and villain, is going to completely divide audiences down the middle. Let's talk about the villain, because this is the conversation that Season 2 absolutely demands. And it is more complicated than it might seem on the surface. Season 1 gave us an antagonist who felt genuinely dangerous in a very specific way. There was a commanding, almost magnetic quality to that villain, a sense that this was someone who owned every room they walked into, someone whose intelligence was matched by their presence, someone who felt like a true and worthy opponent for our hero. The threat felt real and the power felt undeniable. And that dynamic, hero versus villain as two equally powerful forces on a collision course, was a huge part of what made Season 1 so compelling to watch. Season 2's villain is different. And not in a bad way, but in a way that changes the texture of the entire season. This antagonist is smart. Genuinely smart. The kind of smart that feels dangerous in a more quiet, corporate, calculated way. The weapons-dealing operation at the center of this season is not run by someone who relies on brute force or visible menace, it is run by someone who relies on systems, on networks, on layers of protection and plausible deniability. And there is something very real and very modern about that kind of threat. In many ways, this villain reflects how dangerous people actually operate in the real world, not through loud intimidation, but through quiet control. But here is the thing, and this is genuinely one of the most interesting reactions I had while watching this season. There were moments, real, specific moments, where I found myself rooting for the villain. Not against our hero, but alongside the villain. There was something about this antagonist that felt oddly relatable. The motivations made sense. The logic was understandable. And the way this character navigated the world, with intelligence and a certain kind of dignity, made them genuinely compelling to watch. This is not a cartoonish bad guy. This is not someone who exists purely to be defeated. And it is more complicated than it might seem on the surface. Season 1 gave us an antagonist who felt genuinely dangerous in a very specific way. There was a commanding, almost magnetic quality to that villain, a sense that this was someone who owned every room they walked into, someone whose intelligence was matched by their presence, someone who felt like a true and worthy opponent for our hero. The threat felt real and the power felt undeniable. And that dynamic, hero versus villain as two equally powerful forces on a collision course, was a huge part of what made Season 1 so compelling to watch. Season 2's villain is different. And not in a bad way, but in a way that changes the texture of the entire season. This antagonist is smart. Genuinely smart. The kind of smart that feels dangerous in a more quiet, corporate, calculated way. The weapons-dealing operation at the center of this season is not run by someone who relies on brute force or visible menace, it is run by someone who relies on systems, on networks, on layers of protection and plausible deniability. And there is something very real and very modern about that kind of threat. In many ways, this villain reflects how dangerous people actually operate in the real world, not through loud intimidation, but through quiet control. But here is the thing, and this is genuinely one of the most interesting reactions I had while watching this season. There were moments, real